The story begins with Hansol, age 17, attempting to break the world record for a deadlift. As he lifts the weight, surprising everyone, his heart suddenly fails, causing him to lose consciousness. He slowly closes his eyes, wondering if he has blacked out again. However, Hansol gains several different skills as he hears a voice whispering in his ear that he has achieved the legendary status of a bodybuilder. Hansol slowly wakes up, shocked by what's going on. He wonders why the chickens are attacking him. Fed up, he decides to fight back, realizing that he can get protein from the chickens. With the help of a system that tells him how much protein each chicken has, he pounces on them and devours them. Hansol looks down at himself and realizes that he has lost all of his gym gains. He then gazes at his reflection in the water and is shocked by how scrawny he appears, just like us Manhwa readers. Annoyed, Hansol grabs a tree and pulls it out from the ground. He then starts benching it, hoping to gain more muscle. However, 3 months later, he realizes that he has not made any more progress and the only source of protein he has is from the chickens around him. Suddenly, a shadow appears behind him, and as he turns around, he notices a giant rooster. Panicked, Hansol starts running, worried that even one hit from the giant rooster might prove fatal. However, he can't help but admire the rooster's impressive chest muscles. Suddenly, a group of chickens blocks Hansol's path, smirking at him. Hansol manages to run through the group of chickens. His system informs him that the giant rooster contains 12,000 kilograms of protein and consuming it will grant him a rare skill called Amazing Muscle Recovery. After learning about the skill, Hansol prepares to attack the rooster by jumping up on the tree and charging at it. Suddenly, Hansol receives a notification that detects the energy stored within his muscle, allowing him to alter his skeleton. As his arm increases dramatically in size, he lunges at the rooster and punches it in the mouth, causing its head to pop. However, Hansol receives a warning that his muscle durability has worn out, causing him to fall to the ground. Nevertheless, he gains the Amazing Muscle Recovery skill for defeating the rooster boss. Later that night, as Hansol eats the rooster, a few creatures are watching him from a distance. As they approached Hansol, they introduced themselves as ghouls and asked if he was the one who had defeated the boss. Hansol confirmed it. They asked for a request, but unfortunately, he phased out and did not hear their request for a favor. Instead, he instructed them to do 10 sets of laps. The frustrated ghouls walked away, but Hansol offered them some meat. As one of the ghouls attempted to lift it, Hansol became worried that the ghoul might snap its back. Hansol volunteers to carry the meat back to the ghoul village, and as they arrive, the ghoul lord greets him. Hansol is taken aback by the lord's appearance, which consists of thin limbs and a lot of belly fat. The ghoul lord then demands that the ghouls who brought Hansol kneel before him. He grabs his bat and reveals that he had actually been the one who desired to defeat the giant rooster and control it. Annoyed at his followers, he uses his skills to power up his bat and strikes at them. Hansol quickly blocks the attack and wonders why the ghoul lord is attacking weaker ghouls. The ghoul lord questions whether his skill has been activated or not, and then decides to activate it again. This skill allows him to multiply the weight of any object by 2 to 10 times its original weight. Hansol is impressed by this incredible ability. Suddenly, the ghoul lord attempts to strike Hansol with his bat, but in a surprising move, Hansol breaks the bat and lunges toward the ghoul lord. With a tight grip on the ghoul lord's neck, Hansol demands to know what his big three are. The ghoul lord is confused by what Hansol means by the big three. Hansol clarifies that he is referring to the 3 fundamental exercises, but soon realizes that the ghoul lord has no idea what he is talking about. Hansol instructs the ghoul lord to lift the weight. However, the ghoul lord reminds him of their earlier agreement. If the ghoul lord beats Hansol in the big three, Hansol must become his subordinate. The ghoul lord then uses his special skill to lighten the weights and lift them effortlessly. As Hansol prepares to lift the weight, the ghoul lord tries to make it heavier using his skill. Nonetheless, Hansol manages to lift it and throws it into the air, surprising everyone by stating that he forgot to control his strength. All the ghouls bow to Hansol in awe of his incredible strength. He becomes the new leader, and the ghoul lord explains that it is possible for him to return to Earth. He also explains that this world has a concept where the strong consume the weak. The ghoul lord shows Hansol their training ground, and he is shocked by how bad it is. Hansol gathers the ghouls and tells them that for the next 3 months, he will train them to become warriors. He orders them to get down and start doing 100 push-ups. After 3 hours, they are exhausted, but Hansol continues without breaking a sweat. He tells them to stand up and says that it's their mentality that makes them weak. He motivates them to become stronger and fight back against the other tribes. The ghouls start working out again, filled with new motivation. Hansol's trainer skills level up as he leads them through their training. 3 months later, a group of lizardmen begin to search for the ghoul village. Upon spotting the village, they rush towards it. Hansol orders his ghouls to get into position and prepare for the attack. They engage in battle with the lizardmen, who are taken aback by the transformation of the once weak ghoul monsters into a group of powerful warriors. The lizardmen spotted the ghoul lord and believed that if they defeated him, the battle would be over. As the ghoul lord was called out, he asked Hansol what they should do. Hansol recalled a memory from his youth when he was raised by an iguana, a rare species of crocodile that always wanted to play with him. When the iguana lunged at him, he stuck his hand in its mouth as it couldn't penetrate his muscles. He remembered what they told him to do if a pet didn't listen. Back in the present, he lunged at the lizardman, grabbing its armpit and laying it down on the floor. He then intimidated the lizardman, repeating that he was stronger than him. The lizardman, frightened for his life, yielded while the ghouls celebrated. Meanwhile, in a place not too far away called Waruduchi, a lord commanded 3 individuals to investigate the disappearance of the rooster boss that Hansol defeated a while back. As they left the room, the lord questioned whether they could handle the task, but a girl assured him not to worry. We were then introduced to their names: Leapier, who was an expert in swordsmanship, Hendard, who had intense powers. When the lord asked about the third person, the girl claimed that he wasn't particularly talented but works well with the other 2. As they walked towards their destination, they were suddenly ambushed by a group of goblins. The 2 members of the group with powers, Leapier and Hendard, vowed to protect Blog, their third companion. Meanwhile, at the ghouls' village, Hansol was busy training the lizardman to become stronger. As the training session concluded, the lizardman bid farewell to Hansol, thanking him. The rest of the ghouls also said their goodbyes, but Hansol couldn't help but be astonished by the overnight growth of the ghouls. They had become significantly bigger and taller than before. Hansol uses his skill on the ghouls and notices that they have evolved in Gouda builders. Some of the Gouda builders asked Hansol if they could go hunting on their own, but he accused them of trying to skip out on their exercising routine. However, the Gouda builders denied this and explained that they had never defeated chickens before. Now, with their newfound strength and muscles, they believed they were capable of doing so. As they set out on their journey through the forest, Hansol directed the Gouda builders to do walking lunges. Unfortunately, one of them ended up twisting their ankle in the process. Meanwhile, the trio encountered and defeated all of the goblins. However, Blog was disheartened that he couldn't contribute much, so he continued his training throughout the night. Leapier noticed Blog's determination and offered words of encouragement. Suddenly, Hendard appeared and asked what they were up to. He urged them to rest, but just as they settled down, they were ambushed by the lizardmen. It turned out that the lizardmen were actually fleeing from a flock of chickens, who were themselves running away from Hansol and the Gouda builders. It was revealed a few hours earlier, Hansol had doubts about whether the Gouda builders could take on the chickens, considering their larger muscles. As they watched, a chicken ripped 2 trees out of the ground to get to a worm. Inspired, a Gouda builder attempted to do the same to a tree but struggled to do so. Hansol instructs the Gouda builders to gather in 5 rows and teaches them how to use a cable cross to increase the muscles in their chests. As they all rush to try it out, their chests grow bigger. However, the chickens spot them and panic, causing them to evolve and grow even larger. The Gouda builders begin to attack, but are quickly destroyed by the chickens. Hansol warns them to stop provoking the chickens, otherwise they will continue to evolve and become even stronger. The Gouda builders are wondering why they can't win despite training their inner chest. They start panicking, but Hansol explains to them that they have barely done any training, and it is unreasonable to expect to beat the chickens who devote their entire lives to developing their skills. Hansol mentions that they can still win and reminds them of the walking lunges they did while carrying weights. One of the Gouda builders realizes that the source of their strength is from their legs, and Hansol agrees. As he gets into position, he pounces at the chicken, but the chicken tosses the Gouda builder into the air. Hansol forgot to mention that their legs would be tired. The chickens start taunting them and stare at Hansol before rushing towards him. Hansol gets into position when the chicken suddenly has a flashback of its life, from hatching from an egg to meeting its death at the hands of Hansol. Following their defeat, Hansol and the Gouda builders cooked the chickens they had obtained. Hansol congratulated them on their growth as they did a toast. On the next day, Hansol reminds the Gouda builders that they are far from surpassing him. He tells them to hunt carefully, and that he will join them after he finishes his workout, as that is more important than a battle. As the Gouda builders joyfully start hunting for Coax, the human trio arrive at the Cocatra skeleton and are shocked by its size. Blog wonders who could have killed it with this single hit, but the other 2 tell Blog not to worry as they will protect him. Suddenly, the trio hears some noises beyond the bushes, and a bunch of cocks appear with the Gouda builders attacking them. The Gouda builder notices the humans and stops, stating that humans are brutal and like to slaughter others. The Gouda builder calls for the other Gouda builder teams to arrive, signaling them with their chest. However, this also triggers the Coax, causing them to evolve. As they are about to strike the Gouda builders, they think they are doomed. Suddenly, Team 1 and Team 2 Gouda builders arrive, and they begin using their secret technique learned from Hansol. They get into form and use their chest muscles to push the Coax away with such force that they cough blood. A bunch of cocks are about to attack one of the Gouda builders as he prepares to say his goodbyes, thanking his clan. The human trio protects him and strikes the cocks, but they end up triggering the Cocus, causing them to panic. Everyone is taken aback by the dragon-sized cock that stands before them, although it is not too different from what they had expected. The very first dragon that existed had been so consumed by its reputation that it feared its successors would not live up to its repute. Therefore, it decided to distribute its power, birthing a new species called the Cockatrice, which closely resembled dragons. While the two humans are determined to impress Blog by attacking and defeating the huge monster in front of them, Hansol is completely unaware of their plan as he works out. He is deep in thought about how his muscle volume has been increasing much slower than the Gouda builders, even though they exercise at the same rate. Despite this, he is still happy that they listen to him, considering they are still beginners. He reflects on the past 3 months, recalling how he struggled to motivate the weak Gouda builders who were once only crybabies and lacked the drive to live. It was challenging to encourage them to keep working hard, even though they initially failed the exercises. Nevertheless, the Gouda builders persevered, and eventually they started building muscle mass, making Hansol feel satisfied and proud of their progress. Thinking of his master, Hansol begins to miss him, and it occurs to him that his master disappeared around his current age. However, before he could dwell on it further, a Gouda builder frantically approaches him and informs him about the cocks evolving into Cockatrice, which is posing a danger to everyone. The Gouda builder starts to panic about his fellow builders dying, but Hansol quickly interrupts and asks him to point out the direction of the chaos. He then uses his skeletal shifting skills to increase the size and strength of his lower body to shoot himself in the direction that was pointed to him. On the other hand, Hendard and Leaper keep fighting the Cockatrice. On Leaper's suggestion of distracting the monster, Hendard creates a dirt dust and asks Blog to run away, who screams at the stupidity of Hendard to put Leaper in danger. And indeed, Leaper is thrown away easily by the dragon-like rooster. But while falling down from the blow, he ironically gives Hendard a thumbs up, telling him it was a nice job. Blog blabbers about the weirdness of the situation and the consistent thumbs up of a beaten-up Leaper. Hendard gives Blog a blank face and tells Leaper that Blog is caring for them too, as if it's a very stupid thing to do. He then runs towards a Blog who's still holding the Gouda builder as if it's still attacking, and tells him that running away is the only option to save themselves from this monster. Blog is not ready to accept that or have the perfect flight response, while the Cockatrice is very much on the way to step in between the two humans. Blog dramatically calls it being too late and ready to take a blow. Suddenly, the Gouda builders form a complex auxiliary set in front of the two, trying to defend themselves in hopes of Hansol receiving the message and arriving as soon as possible. They try to endure the blows from the Cockatrice in the belief of their friend Hansol, but are thrown off from their position very easily by the Cockatrice. Much to their misfortune, as they all lie injured and drained out, a bunch of Cockatrice surround all of them, ready to have a feast on Gouda builders, but suddenly a flash of light appears, blowing all the Cockatrice off in a single strike. All the Gouda builders are excited that Hansol came right on time to save them all, but as the person comes out of the smoke from the attack, it turns out to be their former Lord Nim and not Hansol. They are all surprised to see their lord there. Meanwhile, Hansol also lands on the ground the same way, only in the wrong location. Their ghoul-like lord just stands there with confidence while being surrounded by the rest of the Cockatrice, while Blog and Hendard praise his range attack. The Gouda builder near them tells them to keep watching their leader. The leader mocks the monsters, throwing a rhetorical question of not coming without a plan. All the Gouda builders get excited on this and exclaim in praise of their lord, while he himself exclaims with the same energy for Hansol to come and save them all, as he now has the attention of the monsters. Everyone pauses and stands in disappointment as he gets on his knees, praying and crying for Hansol to appear. A while back, he'd come out of his hut in the ghoul village out of hunger and decided to go look for his fellows who went hunting, considering there's no danger out there, but indeed there was grave danger that his ghouls were facing. He ends up near the place where all this was happening and hears the screams of his subordinates, realizing he needs to help his subordinates. He angrily picks up a big rock and throws it towards the place with full force, and then increases the force even more midway with his skill. The Lord Ghoul wasn't a bodybuilder like others and didn't even train. He just had this special skill called Heavy Blunt that increased the loaf of the objects he targeted at, and this skill was enhanced to a maximum when Hansol used to ask him to keep increasing the loads for their weightlifting. The other Gouda builders encourage him to keep on fighting since he beat them just about now, and maybe he's just been underestimating his power while he's actually as strong as Hansol. The stupid ghoul actually gets convinced that thinking how it's definitely not easy to beat any such big monster, and he gives so right now, so he gets a boost of confidence and faces the monster chickens, only to get thrown far away by the monsters. Everyone is sure of being doomed after this, so all the dramatic ones come up with emotional lines for their friends, like Blog telling Leaper and Hendard of not getting the jokes, while they weren't ever cracking jokes and seriously mock him. While the Gouda builders also emotionally decide to fight till their last muscle cell in gratitude of Hansol for teaching them all this. On the other hand, luckily the Ghoul Lord was thrown far enough to actually end up right where Hansol was, so Hansol just looks at the ghoul lying in front of him. The Lord then chokes out words to Hansol, begging him to save them all. This angers Hansol. His calmness skill keeps activating and deactivating at this thought. As the ghouls reach the Cockatrice to fight them with all their might, all those monsters cross them and keep running in direction behind them. Everyone is confused at what just happened while the monsters reach Hansol, whose calmness skill is activated while the veins on his body are almost popping out of everywhere in order to try and remain patient. He addresses the raged monsters in a scary tone to stop as he's calmer than ever, while his calmness skill surpasses such a limit that it will be cancelled for a day now. All the builders with the 3 humans run towards the direction where the cockatrice went, since they all feel a certain vibration in their chests that hint them about it being Hansol. Blog, while carrying a tired leaper, questions who Hansol is, to which the builder tells him he's their master and leader with the most sensitive muscle tissue. Blog seems to be wanting more explanation, but he's told by the Gouda builder to tag along and witness it with his own eyes. Another Gouda builder interrupts, asking his fellow to be nice and summarize it for them, so Blog is now told with a great deal of admiration in the ghoul's tone that Hansol is their new ghoul leader. Of course, Blog still can't get anything out of it. A pissed-off Hansol is surrounded by Rage's cockatrices. When one tries to attack it, it's thrown far away by his one-armed dumbbell press. The 2 other big chickens, who thought they can counter, are thrown away in the exact same fashion. Some other monsters then attack Hansol collectively by pressing their feet on him together. Hansol endures it for some time, then pushes through the paws of the dragon chickens, aiming a flying lunge right at the face of one of the cockatrices. He stands on top of one of the dead cockatrices in extreme fury, questioning the idea that if he can make their chest muscles grow using his chest muscles, then can they do that for him too? He goes into his CrossFit mode and increases the muscle size and strength of his upper body while digging his hands inside the ground. He then lifts his hands up furiously once having enough strength, and successfully throws off multiple cockatrices at the same time. He then rips a tree off of ground and starts jumping squats, using it only the jumps and weight involved being cockatrices his ground, and then he uses his cable triceps extension to throw the tree in his hand with a great dole of force on a cockatrice. The Gouda builders halt at seeing multiple bodies of the monsters that were a danger to them just a while back, while Blog, Hendard, and Leaper are stunned at the sight in front of them, finally witnessing the ghoul lord all these ghouls are so obsessed with. On the other hand, even though fighting too well, Hansol realizes that he had used too much of his leg strength in order to get here, and he does not have enough energy to maintain himself for long anymore. Even though knowing he won't be able to maintain his form for long, he just cannot get himself to stop, since he thinks it would be disappointing to their former lord, who used a lot of his skill, with no questions asked, in order to help him and the subordinate Gouda builders to train. Not wanting to have that guilt, he knows he needs to finish all of this in a single move, so he once again moves to increasing his upper body muscles by bench press, the only problem being that the more muscle he increased, the more became the force on his already exhausted lower body, leading to multiple warnings appearing that hinted potential muscle damage. As the chicken-like monsters approached him together, he gets ready to face them despite the expected muscle damage. But suddenly his energy seems revived as all the Gouda builders approach him and provide a chain reaction of touching each other's backs to enhance the strengths, ultimately enhancing the strength of their master Hansol. They support and encourage Hansol by calling it an extra set, which works like a positive boost for Hansol, who then uses all his might and determination to give one final attack to the monsters in front of them. As the monsters lie roasted by Hansol, he and all his fellows lie down the same way, exhausted by what they lightly mention as their day's workout. All the Gouda builders and Hansol lie on the ground, thinking how they'll miss their former ghoul lord who they lost to this fight. The Gouda builders praise how the former lord became less violent and a nicer being. He even helped in this fight and killed one of the beasts. Hansol then asks his subordinates about who is going to help him stand, but they all pay no heed, as if they didn't hear anything, and start to get up and move away, to which Hansol starts threatening them for being ungrateful and not helping him. All this banter, however, is cut short when someone from behind Hansol thanks him for all of his hard work. Everyone pauses at the voice and turns to find their former lord all healthy and fine, giving them a weird look for looking so surprised towards him. Unaware of how they all thought he was dead, he told them he was taking a nap because he didn't feel okay. Hansol and all the Gouda builders just get the biggest smiles on their faces and happily pounce on their former lord, who wants to kill them for this sudden act of affection and tell him to keep caring for them. In the Werdo Duchy, Leaper and Hendard brief their master and their lord, Count Werdo, about the entire event they witnessed. Lord Werdo deems Hansol as the danger instead of the ghoul lord, thinking of the possibility of Hansol turning evil anytime, so they need to deal with him properly. Their master, however, is more focused on the missing Blog from the team they sent. Leaper and Hendard dramatically get teary-eyed at the mention of their friend Blog. After the chaotic fight, Hansol seemed to be wandering around Blog in a rather creepy way while admiring his body and posture. As the other two get frantic at Blog being in potential danger, Hansol pays them no heed and casually asks if Blog wishes to get stronger than now. Hansol easily holds the sword coming at him from behind and still asks unbothered if Blog wants to exercise with him. And of course, this tempted the poor Blog, who readily agreed. Leaper and Hendard narrate the story while wiping their tears, wanting their friend to be saved from whatever Hansol meant by taking him. Werdo simply declines help in this case, not wanting to risk anything for one person, but their master is furious at the thought of her student being taken away and aggressively asks the other two to follow him so they can go save their innocent blog. Poor Lord Werdo just stands in the empty room still looking for the moment to stop her. While in the Bull Village, Hansol introduces the newcomer and offers starting with squats to help Blog settle. Blog, who has no idea what squats are, has a hard time understanding it, but Hansol properly guides him on how to do squats, and even though painful, he ends up doing it right. All the Voodoo builders clap in support and encouragement of their new training fellow. Hansol also appreciates him for doing well for the first time, then asks him to keep doing it, and then puts a barbell in his hands. Blog has a hard time but still balances himself, impressing Hansol to no end. Hansol starts praising Blog and telling him he can become much stronger in his own way and even protect his friends with his strength. Blog gets overwhelmed after being appreciated for the first time and actually starts crying, to which Hansol chuckles, telling him to relax. After correctly identifying Blog's potential, Hansol's Hawkeye skill upgrades from level 2 to level 3. The ghouls question Hansol on bringing all the little cocks with him. He tells them that they can't be reckless while hunting the cocks or they'll get endangered. Hence, they should prevent any kind of extinction. The former lord agrees to him, but shows concern of the cocks being little and weak right now, but when they evolve, only Hansol will be able to beat them. This strikes a nerve of Hansol, who questions again to the former lord if he can't beat them in a very threatening tone. This makes him reconsider, and Hansol then tells him to stop underestimating their beings. In the training ground, Hansol guides all the Voodoo builders in their training, while the former lord supervises Blog. He increases the force of the barbell held by Blog as he tries to lift it, but before they can see the outcome of it, an intrusion throws all of them off the ground. The former master of Blog appears and faces the former lord who was with Blog if he's the one who stole her student, but the innocent lord is confused and he tries to clear about not knowing who she is or not even being the chief of the village anymore, but the arrogant woman decides to try to kill the vulnerable lord just because he didn't answer her in a yes or no. But of course, Hansol does not let this stuck slide this easily. He blocks her attack easily with his arm and saves his former lord, questioning what her motive is since they are only peacefully exercising in their village. Noticing how he blocked her sword, she understands that it's him that her students have been talking about, while Leaper and Hender confirm this from behind, simultaneously exclaiming to Blog to come back to them as they are there to save him. The master simply faces Hansol for stealing her student, while Hansol is surprised and turns to Blog, questioning why he didn't tell him that he already had a master since it caused confusion. Blog stutters at forming an answer, making Hansol smile and ask if it's because he is more interested in exercising than swordsmanship. Hansol gets cocky at that and asks Blog to stop hesitating and say it if it's true. Blog finally manages to apologize to his former master since he does not feel interest in swordplay anymore. The arrogant woman decides to take Blog by force, but Hansol defends the sword attack once again using his body, this time by posing to strengthen his muscles. The woman has her ego hurt at only managing to put a scratch on Hansol. She asks to have a combat with Hansol, and whoever wins can get to keep Blog as their student, since it will show superiority in martial arts. Hansol tries to clear the air that exercising is not martial art but only building the body's muscles and strength, and he only killed those cocks to get protein for his own survival. In return, she mocks about exercise being useless in combat. She further attacks his ego by calling it trash and pointless if they can't even use it in combat. Her trash talk works in what she wanted and hits a nerve for Hansol, and he gets furious and ready to teach that woman if it is useless or not. His anger activates his skill of Coke's leg mode as he gets prepared to face her. The Voodoo builders discuss who could be stronger between the two while sitting as an audience and having a snack when one of them says it's evident it'll be Hansol with that size difference, but Blog tells them not to underestimate the woman who's among the top 10 strongest people in the continent. As Hansol faces her, he analyzes her strengths using his Hawkeye skill and is surprised at her being able to scratch her muscle with only this little of muscle mass. She mocks him by calling him an alien and telling him that her swordplay can cut people into pieces. She keeps attacking him and mentioning such details to him. She then tells him she's been calling him an alien since the mana around him is red, and red mana indicates how evil a person is. She adds how even though he looks like a human, there's no technique or skill that can transform the shape of the body of a person. Hansol does not agree with her and angrily exclaims it being common sense that the more a person puts efforts, the more it changes the shape of the body. She tells him that humans only use mana like hers to fill up for their weaknesses. She then uses her Mountain of Swords combat skill against him that surrounds him with sabers attacking him. She tells him that martial arts can never help a human no matter how much he trains, and it's only trash for them. Exhausted by her attacks, he asks her how strong her opponents get the next day, to which she tells him that it's not her concern. But he tells her that bodybuilders in his gym are never stagnant and always get stronger the next day to beat the enemy they lost from. This time, he defends himself by posing from the same saber attack and increases his strength and size to be ready to show her his skills now. On the other hand, Blog munching on his food and watching the show when Leaper and Hendard approach him trying to apologize from him due to pressurizing him that led to him leaving them, but Blog is confused about all this, and he tells them he only left to train under Hansol and get stronger and then return to them. They are surprised at the news as they thought he'll never return to them. They excitedly inquire about what Blog is learning as they are intrigued too, so Blog gets ready to show them the only training he's yet gotten. He asks former Lord to help them, who also agrees while Blog's two masters fight frantically in the background to get his custody. Blog tells them it's the same as their initial swords training as they need to focus on their lower body and especially their quadriceps muscle since a squat makes that muscle stronger. He tells them that they need to learn the posture first, but if they want to have fun they should directly add weights to their body. Former Ghoul Lord expresses concern at this, but nevertheless lets them have their way when Blog tells him that he'll assist them. Hansol attacks the master with his large fist but retracts pressure at one time, hurting her pride, but he tells her it's only to gain more strength and attack her with even more force as the basic concept of contraction and elongation of muscle goes. But amidst defending that giant fist, her attention is diverted towards the moaning Leaper and Hendard, who are having the time of their lives while training with Blog. She asks Hansol for a timeout to inquire about the workout in the most fascinating way, so even though confused, he tells her it's squatting. She suddenly apologizes to him, telling him she wants to include it in her training as well. This pauses Hansol and brings him back to his normal size in bewilderment. She tells him that the peak happiness in her students shows her their passion with this training. They both shake their hands on a common ground of being united through workouts. While traveling along Ryan, the Swordmaster woman, Hansol admires her well-built forearms and asks how she got them. She laughs at his childish behavior and tells him that it's because of her habit of swinging the sword around. She also then asks him a question about how he thinks it's okay to teach his special techniques so easily without asking anyone for anything in return. He tells her that he thinks it's fine and it fills his dream of spreading the concept of exercise and gym around the entire world, so wherever he goes, he can find a gym, and in this way, people can come up with new ways to strengthen their bodies. Ryan laughs at this, thinking the innocent boy is joking, and then shares that she is fond of him, so if he ever wants a favor, he can ask her. Hansol shows his gratitude at that. The humans and the ghouls camp for the night, but while having dinner, Blog approaches Hansol and shares a deep concern about the discrimination in his continent. He tells them that his place discriminates heavily on the basis of status and power, but it gets even worse when it comes to humans and non-humans, so it could get dangerous and disturbing for Hansol and the good builders out there. He calls it a serious problem, and when Blog starts to speak again, Hansol mindlessly gets up and walks towards where the horses are eating their food. He eats a fistful of their food and eats it, suddenly going to a food coma, recognizing the stiff and rough texture of the oatmeal inside that food. Some of the high-ranked companions judge Hansol for eating from the livestock food and being mannerless. They mock the food choices of monsters, but the former Lord Ghoul suddenly appears in front of them and uses a dangerous tone to tell them that this can offend any monster nearby. He then brings a bowl forward to them, telling them he mixed their food to create something and they should try it. The two are disgusted at first, but then the smell of the food tempts them to taste it, and when they actually do, they are absorbed by the heavenly taste of the food by who they call a monster. They keep praising the deliciousness of the food while the former Lord tells them if they stop talking nonsense about monsters, maybe they can get close and he can share the recipe. The two of them readily agree. Hansol approaches Ryan and tells her that he's finally come up with the favor he wants from her. He tells her that he wants the source to the oat they've been serving the horses. She first thinks it's for the livestock, but he tells her that it's for him. She's surprised while the Gouda builders try to intervene and tell Hansol that she's a high-ranked lady and they should not ask for such a little favor and use it for something big. Even Ryan agrees to that, but Hansol is offended and he tells them that oat is very important for them as it's a carbohydrate that gives them energy and keeps them full, and an only protein-containing diet will eventually damage their livers. The Gouda builders get excited at the thought of getting muscle growth and energy from the oats and start chanting in favor of Hansol, and even the knights and swordsmen are tempted by the emotional speech of Hansol to try to get more energy. But as soon as all of them try it, they spit it out disgusted by the taste. Except for Blog, who has the exact same reaction as Hansol and actually acknowledges the food, impressing Hansol even more. Seeing Hansol's seriousness, Ryan agrees to grant him this favor, making him a happy child. Hence, all the ghouls walk confidently flaunting their bodies, pissing the humans even more by looking happy. Inside the castle, Lord Werdo addresses Hansol about the situation and how he only wants a merely livestock meal in return for teaching them his workout. Hansol's confident replies piss the Count off, but he agrees due to it being the general's command. The two then leave while the Count sits on his seat exhausted. He talks to himself about how he was worried of the increasing popularity of General Ryan among the public, but her breeding a monster amongst the commoners automatically solves his problem, as he will make sure these monsters serve as a nuisance for the people driving the general down with them. He orders to summon the Tuchula mercenary corps as his evil propaganda starts now. In the training ground, all the training are stopped by their teacher, who announces the change of course from the general, as they all need to learn from the monsters about their workout and listen to them with no defiance, but the humans are still not ready to accept that and stare at Hansol and the Goodabuilders with disgust. Hansol politely introduces himself and requests them to be nice. He then gets to point and asks all of them to lay down on their hands. Everyone stares at Blog on the situation, but he simply tells them to do as he says. As nobody listens, the next moment Hansol and the ghouls are themselves on their hands as Hansol shouts the command at them once again. Some of the humans as well as Blog listen to him this time. One of the students rebels openly by mocking his fellows for listening to a meat monster. His teacher shouts at him for it being the general's command, but he pays no heed to it, and is not at all ready to work under a monster that he considers lowly to humans. He makes his fellows stand up and not let down their pride as humans. Hansol also stands up in anger, wanting to deal with the arrogant student, but the former lord intervenes, telling Hansol that he'll deal with the situation with words. He mentions solutions to the 3 reasons for the students' rebellions. Law can teach them and command them in a way that they won't be taking direct orders from a monster. Second, they can have a fight between a monster and a human to decide the better training method. Third, the fighting results can prove to humans if their training methods are uncivilized or not. Hansol is heavily impressed by the idea and the confidence of the rest of the Goodabuilders to go with this idea. The guy agrees to the proposition and volunteers himself for the sparring. One of the Goodabuilders came forward to face him. The human guy is arrogant, being a Tutula mercenary corp that was hired by the Count himself and knows that he can easily win against those monsters. He attacks the ghoul with his sword, but only a simple one-armed dumbbell press punch by the Goodabuilder knocks him out of consciousness. At last, the Goodabuilders and Hansol are glad that at least he is alive. Hansol scolds the Goodabuilder for being so hard on the human. Telling him their training is not for showing off, the Goodabuilder starts to apologize, but then Hansol himself tells him it was not his fault confusing the poor Goodabuilder. Hansol then turns to the humans and tells them that they need to obey him now. As they all agree, the injured volunteer tries again by using his combat skill at the Goodabuilder he faced from behind, but the former lord uses his skill to slow them down, and Hansol reaches him fast from behind and just taps his chest with his palm, sending him flying off into the wall hard enough to create a print of his body in the wall. General Ryan reaches the training ground in a pleasant mood, unaware of the chaos going down there. She pauses at the crowd near a wall, mumbling about it being magic, when she calls the human trainer to fill her in on the situation. Mr. Trainer tells her that there were conflicts on obeying orders, so combat occurred, but now everyone thinks Hansol and the monsters used magic against them. She simply calls Hansol and asks if he did. Hansol denies any such thing, and Ryan simply agrees to that. A voice from behind interrupts them, questioning why Ryan is believing the words of a monster in front of her people. Lord Mordo enters the training ground and questions Ryan about whose side she is on, the monsters or her people. She is on the side of her people, so Mordo corners her for believing the words of a monster and supporting it and causing problems and drama around the town and the soldiers with this idea of hers. While Ryan is confused at the absurdity of her leader, an innocent Hansol offers training Mordo to, thinking he came there for that, but he is timely stopped by the former ghoul lord. On grounds of causing problems and getting a student injured with this new training idea, Mordo announces exile for General Ryan for 2 years. Ryan just stares darkly at Mordo for this decision, while all her students start whining and supporting their general, begging Mordo to not do this to her and that they can just kill the monsters to get rid of the problem. This and the stare by Rayon scare the cowardly Lord Mordo. Ryan, being composed, apologizes to Hansol for not being able to take care of them, but Hansol is pretty chill about the situation as usual. She requests Mordo to still let the monster guests stay there for 3 months as promised, to which Mordo agrees. She then smirks at some thought and then starts shouting at her students. She scolds them for not only discriminating between themselves and the monsters, but also talking back to their feudal lord and forcing him to change his decisions. Ryan herself steps back and accepts her punishment on the lame excuse of letting a new seed take her place and grow, while the soldiers aren't very fond of that decision of hers. Nevertheless, she takes leave with some plan in her mind that is hinted at through her weird evil expressions. The best part of all this is an unbothered Hansol performing lunges amidst the chaotic decisions. At night, the injured mercenary corp walks out of the palace with his fortune, causing all the drama to corner Ryan, and is happy that he won't be needing such dirty jobs after only a little more fortune. He then looks at the picture of his wife and daughter, talking to them and telling them he'd be with them soon. But something in the photo is burning, not on his locket, but in his house in the town, where fire takes over the whole town. But the fire is not what the major escape needs to be about for people. It's the zombies that are lurking around the town in great numbers. On a nearby cliff, a weird-looking guy watches the town burn and enjoys this scenario while dancing around with the girl Elise accompanying him. Leaper, Hendard, and other soldiers bid farewell to Ryan, who questions why Blog is accompanying him. Blog tells her that Hansol had to gather something today and didn't have training, so he permitted him to accompany her for a while. An intrigued Ryan tells him to let's go visit that place, so he tells her he'll lead the way. Impressed by his growing confidence and stance, she jokes that if he gets a little braver, she might marry him. Poor innocent Blog, not understanding the joke, calls her around 60, and the next thing is obviously dashing to save his life, cause boy, you don't bring age and women together. Ryan and Blog catch up to two Gouda builders who are busy catching slimes on command of Hansol, excited about what the outcome of it will be. Ryan questions why they're doing that, so they tell her it's Hansol's command, but then she asks why he wants slimes, to which they pause a little, and then tells her to go along and see. She's confused about if they don't know what he's planning, but Blog tells her that Gouda builders are pretty bad at explaining stuff, so it's better to just go witness it themselves. They reach where Hansol and the Gouda builders are training. She tells Hansol she came to see them, simultaneously questioning the reason why he's collecting slimes, while in the background the Gouda builders carry on cornering the slimes by scaring them with their chest muscle vibrations. He tells her that he got some new ideas about athletic training, but he didn't have adequate equipment, so he decided to build it himself. He then tells her that he'll be removing their regenerating balls so they regenerate over some years, and then using his muscles, he'll mold the shape of the slime to create a training band. He tells her that they can use them for exercises, rehab, warming up, and much more, but his rant of admiration for athletic training and these bands is cut short by an apology from Ryan. This confuses him, but Rhiannon proceeds to tell him that she had a doubt that he was pretending to be obsessed with training to blend in with the humans, but turns out it's actually a deep-rooted passion for him. She also apologizes for failing at making Wardo of Duchy a town clear of discrimination, and is just tolerating stupid decisions made by their feudal lord. She tells him that she feels he is different and can actually make changes to their world. Funny enough, changing to Hansol only means changing and flaunting his muscles or muscles of their entire team, but upon denial, he is confused at how he could do that, to which she reveals that it would be by taking her students under his training, who would now obey him with no judgments thrown. Even all the student soldiers seem honestly excited to learn from him, while Hansol and the Gouda builders are just pure enough to be excited about acquiring new members. On the other hand, Wardo leads the army himself to fight the zombies around the town. He tells his army to be careful about getting themselves or their horses bitten, and then orders them to charge at the zombies. While the army of Wardo charges at the zombies, Ben, the weird-looking bad guy, tries to keep his monster dog, Bedorman, quiet, since he does not consider it the right time to reveal being behind all this. He somehow doesn't want Ryan to be involved in this and seems to be waiting to have a certain surety before he shows himself to Wardo. He then kicks the wild dog to calm down and wait till their props, the zombies, do their jobs. Hansol, on the other hand, teaches his new squad about the training of muscles and stamina, while their human leader accompanies him. He then wants to introduce CrossFit to them instead of bench press. It's a training method that uses varied intensity exercises to train the muscles in such a way that the body can be used in a hexagonal way. He then suggests making it a group activity to increase the quality of work, as well as build better relations and teamwork between the ghouls and the humans. As the Gouda builders and the soldiers train in CrossFit and work on their bodies, the soldiers lose their bodies in parallel while fighting the zombies and being in a literal battle with them. As Hansol trains using the former lord's heavy blunt, he questions the human leader of the siren he's been continuously hearing. He tells him that Wardo is in a battle with the zombies, and the siren indicated the need for more backup since the opponent turned out to be stronger. Hansol in return replies to the fourth group, telling them not to let their core collapse and work harder, giving a clear sign of how less he cares about the situation. The soldiers in the town are appreciated by Wardo for working well yet against the zombies, and tell them that the end of the path they are facing has the base of their enemy, and they just need to annihilate them for peace. The soldiers are then ordered to charge towards the path, but the new general shows concern about being too much into the enemy's den. Wardo still seems confident, deeming that zombies have no intelligence and hence can plot nothing against them. He wasn't entirely wrong in his stance, just he didn't know who his real enemy was behind all this. Wardo then shouts some more encouraging terms for his soldiers to keep going and eradicate them all. Ben seems to be enjoying all this, and as a bunch of soldiers finally surround him, he signals Bedorman and his other monster friend to appear, and then dramatically starts a monologue about how the core of this plan, Ben, has appeared. He then proceeds to give them life lessons, even though he is gonna end the life part for them. Nevertheless, he tells them that spears are always a good choice for war and never swords, as they can't help in stopping the enemies charging at them. As the two monsters cut through the soldiers, Wardo finds Ben and attacks him, but Wardo uses his little magic wand-like stick to stop Wardo's sword. They both exchange words expressing the familiarity between them, and as Wardo mocks him for not being well-trained like Ryan, Ben shows some other research he did to be stronger. He then injects himself with some dangerous-looking liquid and turns into a horrendous monster, leaving Wardo stunned at the sight. Wardo is shocked at the sight of the monster form of Ben and questions if he's been experimenting on humans. Knowing that the other two monsters will be a distraction if they appear there, he thinks he needs to kill the mentally unstable guy before him as soon as possible. Wardo uses his combat skill to attack Ben with great strength, only for Ben to swing his large hand and slap Wardo down into a rock. Wardo is speechless at the speed and power he just witnessed, but he is lucky to be conscious enough to timely get out of the next attack coming from Ben that would have definitely finished him otherwise. Wordo tries to read the path of the attack from Ben and manages to defend himself against one or two, but it does not take him some solid explanation to tell him that Ben is definitely far stronger than him. Suddenly, Ben manages to make a successful attack and lands Wordo on the ground, his back hitting a tree. Wordo seems to be accepting the overwhelming strength of Ben as he starts shaking and wonders, even though Ben used unorthodox methods, what could possibly have been the way to get this strong? Ben laughs at Wordo, knowing and wording his exact same thoughts and mocking him that it's not some rocket science and just the concept of the development of civilization. He tells him that there is more to learn than swordsmanship, but he doesn't do that, hence why he is stagnant and not developing at all. He calls Wordo weak, and on the counter he gives the example of Ryan being strong. Ben agrees with Ryan's capabilities, but he also gives Wordo a reality check that just because Ryan is unique and strong does not mean the other soldiers are also strong, and they all cannot be measured using the same scale. Wordo looks around at the massacre of his soldiers and calls it impossible to believe that his soldiers are losing. This denial of Wordo annoys Ben even more, so he decides to just end it with Wordo. But before he could do that, his attack is defended by the general, who asks his Sir Wordo to stay back as he tries to take care of this situation. But the general and Ben both are left dumbfounded when they see Wordo running away on the most cowardly way without bothering to care about others. Ben breaks the silence by starting to laugh out loud at how selfish Wordo is to save himself alone and leave his soldiers to be on their own. The general then announces the soldiers to retreat. He shouts that they have indeed lost the battle, and now every soldier should run to their town to save themselves. He even covers for the feudal lord by telling people to follow him in escaping. The general then tries to announce that he will try to take care of the situation as hard as he can, but he is cut off in the middle by Ben, simply killing him by punching him to the ground with his giant fist. The other monster asks Ben if he should follow them, but Ben, who's returning to his original form, tells him to let them go since they already know where they are headed, and he is already sure that Wordo is going to be recruiting a bigger army to try and finish them, but he doesn't know that a greater number of people would actually be a favor Wordo will be doing to Ben. As Wordo rushes back on his horse to his castle, he looks humiliated and scared, wondering what they should do to actually defeat those monsters. He wonders how the hell would he defeat them while in the same parallel, an unbothered Hansol is busy performing some 150,000 dumbbell press while standing. As Wordo and his army flee, he shouts for someone to fill him in on the stats of the situation. The girl Rumi comes forward to report to Wordo that out of 400, 347 were lost one way or another, and in the remaining alive, only 26 soldiers are left capable to fight. Wordo realizes that only 100 proper soldiers are left, and there's no way he can win against Ben with an army of 126. Seeing the frustration of her feudal lord, Ruby suggests calling Ryan back, but Wordo knows it's too late, and she won't reach back on time. Ruby then hesitantly suggests asking those monsters to help them, since rumor has it that Hansol is on equal footing with Ryan, so maybe they can't beat the enemies. She tells Wordo that those monsters are obligated to help them since they are being given food and shelter here. Wordo gets excited at the idea of making monsters fight against monsters. 3 days later, when Wordo and his soldiers reach back, they straight up head to the training ground, and Wordo commands everyone to stop their training and gather around. Hansol and the Gouda builders are not impressed by his tone, but nevertheless listen to what he has got to say. Wordo shouts that he is ready to give them a chance to repay their debt by letting them stay in their town. Wordo is stupid enough to keep calling them lowly beings and ordering them to follow his order. Wordo starts to get a bit nervous when he gets 0 reactions and only the blank faces of the monsters stare at him. He then tries once again by telling them that this is their chance to show off whatever training method they have. Hansol, still not taking him seriously, asks everyone to pose and show off their muscles and tells Wordo this is how they show off bodybuilding, not by fighting. Wordo's patience gets thinner and thinner, and he starts shouting at them, but he is not the only one who's finally losing patience. Hansol shouts back at him with the deadliest stare, telling him that they won't fight because any muscle damage or loss would affect their workouts. Wordo doesn't understand Hansol's words, but definitely understands that he needs to apologize and take his leave from that stare of Hansol. Wordo and Rumi turn back while Hansol, going back to his composed mood, tells everyone to let's start over with their training. Wordo asks Rumi to call General Ox, who may not be a person with a good personality, but he is the only one with strength coming close to that of Ryan's. All the soldiers gather at the front gate of the castle, ready to face the approaching zombies. A huge army of zombies starts surrounding the castle. Ox calls out the leader of the army, offering him to have a discussion, while Wordo feels slightly shocked at seeing Elise there. Ox offers a combat with one of the monster's representatives to decide who wins the battle. Ben is bored, yet he agrees to the deal. Ox is excited about the face-off and dramatically lands from the wall to outside the castle, while one of the crazy companion monsters of Ben comes forward ready to fight. Ox faces the minster with a body size almost similar to him and mocks to let's compare their skills too. They both start a heavy face-off where Ox actually manages to hit the monster a few times. Ox then inquires what the body of this monster is made of to be this skilled and weirdly strong, but the monster seems to be out of his senses as he cowardly starts stammering danger and starts running away from the Ox. Ox laughs at this and starts chasing him adamant about ending this battle on terms of one of them dry. Just as Ox reaches the monster, he hears it whisper and almost there. It catches Ox off guard. The monster running away wasn't actually being scared, but actually, it was luring Ox into a trap. Ben increases the size of his arm and punches Ox from behind, trapping him into what he thought was a sacred battle. Ben reveals to Ox that the only reason for accepting this battle was to get Ox out of the equation, since he was the only strong variable left in Werdo's army. The former monster beats Ox to a pulp while he begs to be spared. The monster in the end throws Ox into the sea of hungry zombies, taking only an instant for Ox to have turned onto their side as a zombie. The humans are speechless at the sight. They all just witness with their strongest soldier being sacrificed. Ben approaches the gates again and mocks Werdo to give up already since they have nothing left to fight against his army. Werdo is nowhere near ready to hand over his nation to someone who willingly gave up on being a human. Ben then orders his zombies to charge at the gate and moves back to watch the show. Werdo orders the archers to shoot the arrows at the zombies. The only problem is that the soldiers appointed as archers never even used a bow before and have no idea how to aim. Werdo is in extreme panic when Rumi asks what should they do now, only to get a blank "I don't know" from her feudal lord. Werdo then loses his cool and starts shouting he does not know and starts running frantically. While running like a scared kid who saw a ghost, he gets his entire life flashbacks of being called a coward by his age fellows, being told by his father that only cowards run away, and hearing Ryan talk about him and worry that he gets scared a bit too easily, and his mother mocking him with a petty statement that running away is his good trait and anyone who follows a running Werdo would definitely reach a safe place. He also gets a traumatic flashback of not being able to save a woman, probably his wife. Not being able to handle all this, he starts shouting at his thoughts and his past that he did not want to run away either, and it was him who hated this trait of himself the most. He feels so heavy with the burden of responsibility and shouts to air about no one knowing what it is like to be in his shoes. He keeps shouting and running that even a coward who can't handle responsibilities has a little greed to keep people important to him safe. He runs frantically into the gates of the training ground and ends up on the ground in front of Hansol and the Gouda builders, begging them to kill him if they want, but do him the favor of saving his soldiers and his people. He keeps begging them while crying like a kid. Hansol looks at him, asking in short that Werdo is ready to work out, leaving the poor mentally scattered Werdo confused by Hansol's words once again. Hansol then sarcastically passes a comment that he won't take Werdo's life, but he will be charging him a heavy fee for this favor as all the Gouda builders stretch with him to go get rid of the problem at the gate of the castle. As Hansol and the Gouda builders march towards the gate, the newbies also show interest in participating, but Hansol stops them, telling them they're not strong enough to participate yet safely. Werdo watches them walk away with determination. He still thinks they are a bunch of weird idiots, but he simultaneously finds them very cool when walking like that. Hansol and his students quite literally march towards the gate, but he tells them to march in an interval training method used to increase speed by varying pace every now and then since it's an emergency. He keeps guiding them on their speed so they can reach the gate as soon as possible. Former Lord huffs behind, not being able to keep up with the strong Gouda builders since he does not train as much as them. He looks at his fellows that have gone so far away that they are hardly in sight. As the zombies get into the gates and try to attack humans and convert them, Hansol and their fellows reach right on time, saving a mother and kid from turning into zombies. They all come and lightly press the chest of the zombies, throwing them far off. The kid with his mother is heavily impressed by the strength and asks his mother to want to learn swordsmanship to be that strong. His mother, herself amazed, tells him it was swordsmanship, and they'll definitely ask them about this fighting technique once the chaos settles. Hansol comes to face the zombies and stares confused at the creatures walking mindlessly and ranting rubbish. The former lord catches up to him on time, filling him in on what zombies are. While having a hard time to breath, he tells Hansol to treat them like walking corpses. Hansol likes the concept since he won't be feeling bad for attacking these creatures. The former lord asks what Hansol is going to be doing. Hansol analyzes the situation and suggests pushing the zombies out with his chest muscle vibrations since they are all coming in from only one opening, the main gate. The former lord stands there pausing for a moment, slightly annoying Hansol, but then he agrees with the plan and requests Hansol to let him lead the rest of the team then. Hansol readily agrees to make the former lord excited about the situation. The former lord then confidently starts ordering the groups to spread around, telling them what places to guard and deal with. He has the time of his life while guiding his Gouda builders who successfully help around the soldiers in dealing with the armies. The former lord then looks at Hansol successfully driving zombies away with his chest muscles and is amused since he was not really expecting that technique to work. Wordle catches up to them, requesting people to block the gate, since even though Hansol is blocking the gate, any slip-in could endanger the lives of commoners. Ruby shouts about the gate being broken, and that there is no other thing to block the gate. Wordle is panicked at the situation when suddenly Blog approaches with other Builder seniors holding a huge kettlebell. All of them seem to be huffed and short of energy and breath, but still working hard to approach Hansol with it to block the entrance. Everyone's mouths are left hanging at them lifting such a huge weight, as well as them noticing Blog, who they all consider an incompetent student of Ryan. One of the senior Builder ends up losing his strength, and knowing any more effort would result in permanent damage to his muscles, he gives up, leaving a little more weight on the rest of the fellows. Blog almost loses his vision with the newly exerted weight, but then somehow he feels a bit light, only to realize that their old lord has been using his skill to reduce some of the weight off of their shoulders. While the others guard them, the kettlebell group proceeds in extreme agony and effort to reach the entrance they need to block. The kettlebell finally blocks the entrance, and the huffed and sweaty squad looks at each other blankly. Hansol appreciates their efforts, leading to a gush of happiness and enthusiasm in between them. The kettlebell group proceeds to take a rest, while two other groups jump out to Hansol to support him in pushing the zombies away on orders of the old lord. They ask Hansol if they're doing it correctly, when he tells them to put more energy into their chest muscles. The zombies still try to attack them when Ruby shouts from above to not let the zombies bite them, or they'll turn half dead like them, but one of the zombies manages to bite one of the Builders. The Builder seems to be in excruciating pain and is about to turn into a zombie when his fellow elbows him blankly, telling him to stop pretending to be infected since they are already not alive. The actor Builder laughs at this, as he found the drama fun, but his lie was caught. Ruby, on the other hand, is not all amused by the chaotic nature of those Builders, who are sharing a laugh together at this while simultaneously driving the zombies away. As the zombies try to attack them, one of the zombies reaches Hansol and tries to bite his chest. This annoys Hansol, and he stares at him furiously, smacking him away for making his muscles dirty. Ben, who's been watching the drama unfold from a height nearby, he is confused about seeing the sight of a weird kid and some ghouls fighting his troops and helping humans. After a moment of confusion, Ben laughs, amused, as he was not expecting such a situation. He then orders his zombies and the two other monsters to attack Hansol and bite him, but before the two monsters could reach him, the soldiers, with newfound courage from the backup of the ghouls, start confidently attacking and fighting. They attack furiously in order to avenge the death of their generals, Ivory and Ox, whom they lost in the two face-offs. Wordle rushes to the top of the gate where Rumi is, and while Rumi asks him to stay back so as to not get hurt, he finds a way to talk to Hansol and points towards Ben and his very serious and silent girl, Elise, telling him they are the ones who caused all of this, but in the sea of the zombies in front. Hansol is not able to see who Wordle is pointing at. Wordle requests him to keep going straight, and he will find a guy with blue hair who is the problem behind all this. Hansol gets ready to go and asks his fellow Builders to handle the zombies on their own, who confidently accept it. Hansol then casually uses his reverse peck deck fly that simply throws the zombies off to the sides to clear the way in front of him, and he walks ahead as if it was no big deal. Wordle witnesses this as a miracle, heavily impressed by what he underestimated a few days back. As Hansol strolls down the path towards Ben, he finally realizes that the situation is getting out of hand and curses his army for being worthless, and asks for his opinion of Elise a bit anxiously. Elise reacts in her usual way, with no reaction except for a blank stare. Ben stands up, expressing how he did not want to intervene in this situation of taking over the castle, but since the events turned out to be a bit unexpected for them, so he has got no choice but to get involved now. Both Ben and Hansol walk towards each other as Ben transforms into his monster formation midway, and Hansol just scratches his head at the sight and increases the size of his muscles too. Both of them run toward each other, ready to give a show of great physical strength. As the two combat, Ben questions Hansol's strength and his reason for fighting in favor of humans while being a monster, but that thought is too far to be Hansol's concern. His reason for anger is the fact that Ben is trying to harm his future training buddies. Hansol grips Ben into a chokehold and is not fazed by Ben's attacks at all. Hansol then decides to retaliate Ben's attacks, which alerts Elise standing far and observing it all. Elise alongside Birdom rush to help Ben, revealing her previously gowned body. Her body is basically the representation of a weaponized doll with spider legs, but all sword-like. As Elise runs towards Ben, she's swiftly stopped by a long-haired woman who turns out to be the niece of Ryan Line. As Elise sends Birdom to Ben, Line mocks her for having a sloppy swordsmanship. A machine like Elise gets into a face-off with a confident Line. The Builders get rid of the zombies by throwing rocks at them, while former Lord guides them and adds the force of the rocks to burst them and let them fall like fireballs. He also works simultaneously to guide all the divided groups of Builders to have them do their respective jobs in an extremely coordinated manner. Wordle observes him from the tower above and is amazed by the daunting ability of the Ghoul Lord to analyze and strategically lead the whole situation. This reminds Werdo of his grandfather's story of their legendary strategist monster who stood on side of humans in one of their Demon World wars. Try and get away from the hold of Hansol, Ben changes the form of his arm into a weapon to hurt Hansol on the side of his chest, only to see a crazy sight of Hansol gripping his weird arm through his chest muscles. Ben is left speechless at the situation and does not know what to do next when a Bonanado attack strikes the two. It's a unique skill of Bertoman that creates a tornado combining magic with wind and indulge iron-like bones in that storm. The attack, strong enough to bust open the head of a person, hits Hansol with all its might, only to not even move him an inch. In fact, the impact felt like a massage to Hansol, discouraging the poor dog until Ben praises him, since even though it didn't affect Hansol, it did hurt Ben. Ben, not being able to find any other solution, decides to use his last strategy that he had been saving for when he faced Ryan. He injects some more fluids inside of him and warns Hansol the last time to not blame him for the things that are about to unfold. Hansol looks at Ben, bored at his blabbering, thinking no matter how strong Ben is, he can't defeat his grip strength. But this time Ben actually manages to move his arm and grip Hansol's neck, mocking him for thinking he can't defeat Hansol. Ben's rest of the body turns flat and rigid like a disc, making Hansol's grip lose, since Ben's neck does not seem noticeable anymore. As Hansol's grip on Ben's changed body loses, Ben punches him hard enough to throw the muscled man far off. Hansol manages to balance himself and stay unharmed, but is surprised at the intensity of the punch. Ben's movements become so fast that it's not comprehensible to Hansol, but even though not being able to see Ben, who's wandering around Hansol in random manner to confuse him, Hansol does not seem to be scared. He decides to use his muscle contractility to endure Ben's attacks. He uses his knowledge about the muscle fibers to pose and contract his muscles in a faster manner, since he knows that the only way to beat Ben at the moment is by enduring his attacks till he gets tired. Ben, who is enjoying thinking Hansol is tense, keeps mocking him for interfering in his business and hitting him, but he starts to get infuriated when he notices that his attacks aren't really hurting Hansol. He then attacks stronger, but Hansol still endures the pain, adamant on winning this battle of stamina, unaware of Ben's body and strength not being natural. Ben tries to attack Hansol again, but does not succeed, once again leaving him confused about the weird strength of Hansol. Hansol mentally knows that his body would also get tired of changing his posture so fast, since he's not used to doing this, and wonders when Ben would get tired. On the other hand, Leaper and Hendard are busy fighting the other monster, Frank, but are obviously not strong enough to beat it. Frank mocks them for being weak, but Leaper throws a dramatic statement that they'll still be able to handle him with the power of their friendship. Obviously, this statement isn't effective in beating monsters, so Leaper is brutally punched down to the ground, and when Hendard tried to jump at him with his sword attack, Frank takes note of his slow movements as compared to his and swiftly moves Leaper in aim of his sword. Hendard barely manages to stop his sword from killing his best friend. Frank is about to slaughter Hendard from behind when a fast blow hits it, easily passing it out. It turns out to be Hansol, who praises Hendard for his efforts and then disappears back in no time. This confused turn of events is enough to convince Hendard to join Hansol's team. In the outskirts, where Ryan is meditating in peace, a soldier suddenly dashes into her place, surprising her enough to mock him jokingly. He briefs her and rushes that the town is under attack of zombies, but she's unfazed that her army is strong enough to handle that. The soldier then tries to make her understand the graveness of the situation by telling her that the zombies are led by Ben, only to hear a laugh from Ryan. Upon the panic of the soldier, she tells him that there are two shields in the castle, her reliable ally Hansol and her niece Line, the future #1 the continent. In the Dark Age of War, the elves used to be weak until a human physician Lats taught them to exercise and meditate at the same time, gradually making it a method of battle by elves. Line lives in the forest of elves to master the Lats exercise, and now completely blended into it, she's become one of the finest in just a span of 7 years. Using this technique, Line swiftly dodges all the attacks by Elise, and even when Elise tries to attack her midair, thinking she won't be able to change her movements this easily in air, Line still holds her attacks, mocking Elise of being no match to her, while literally balancing herself on one of the spear-like arms of hers. She then starts attacking Elise by moving her arm in a circumduction motion. As they both fight rigorously, Line seems pretty chill and talks to Elise casually about her blades being similarly to her Aunt Ryan's, but also mentions that their skills are still far apart. While in the outskirts, Rion hiccups, thinking maybe someone's talking about her. Extremely furious, Elise attacks her with all her arms simultaneously, but of course Line manages to trap her in that and decides to finish the drama already now. On the other side, Hansol starts to get tired of taking all the blows, while Ben seems to be tired of trying to hurt Hansol, and they both wonder why the opposite still doesn't show any difference in their energies. Ben starts attacking Hansol harder to get him down, while Hansol defends harder, waiting for Ben to slow down, but Ben seems to be confident that his potion gave him the power similar to that of an elder dragon. Hansol gets mad at this statement and defends his attack, telling him he exercises harder than all the power Ben has. Before the fight can continue, Ben starts noticing the side effects of his potion and back off with his potato-looking body to get his medication. Hansol looks at his deforming body and asks in confusion if he's going to change his form once again, but Ben ends up vomiting something green all over the place and going back to his original form. Acting all delusional, he tells Hansol to let's stop fighting and live in the beautiful world with peace, but Hansol seems to be angry at the unfolding drama now and wants to end what Ben initiated. The sole reason for Hansol's anger being the wasted time of all the exercise lovers they could have spent working out. Ben starts freaking out at Hansol's angry face and starts begging him to stop, not recalling why he was fighting, but the begging slips out of his mouth how he only wanted to resurrect Elise, and that's how he gets a recollection of what he's been doing. Elise is dead and he wants revenge. He gets up realizing that the painful injection has the side effect of filling head with flowers, and he injects himself with some more potion and changes his form, ready to end this before the side effects show up again. But his eyes are left wide when far in the air he sees his machine version of Elise falling off, all disintegrated. Flashback to 32 years back, when Wardo's father was the ruler and he was a young trainee of Ryan. He used to train with his closest friend Ben. But the 17-year-old Ben was more invested in reading about magic than swordsmanship, and used to spend his time indulging into the possibilities of magic and talking to his uninterested 17-year-old friend Wardo. A normal day into their lives, Ben shared with Wardo about how magic is directly linked to emotions, and due to the restricted emotions of people around, their mana is limited. Wardo, who like other people, thinks magic is a curse and only physical strength is important. He forces Ben to have a friendly combat, and after a good fight, Wardo wins against Ben. Their master, Ryan, witnesses this and praises Ben for his efforts, wondering why he loses even with having talent. Ben tells her he doesn't find it fun, to which Ryan gives Wardo's example and tells him that he's got to reach a certain level to find it fun. But ironically, Wardo doesn't enjoy swordsmanship either. Their conversation is interrupted by a woman who mocks them, saying that they just lack talent. They both are pissed at Ryan's apprentice, Elise, but Elise doesn't seem bothered. With the happiest smile, she offers to fight them both simultaneously and still win, to which they get even more pissed and call her a bitch. Of course, that doesn't sit well against a talented swordsman, so they both end up getting beaten to pulp single-handedly by Elise. Instead of being angry, the two beaten-up teenagers laugh while lying on the ground, disoriented, heavily impressed by her skills and her beauty. Ben shares with Wardo how he's so impressed with her that he's going to work harder on his strength and win streak to reach her level and then marry her. Ben actually works hard enough to match Wardo's win streak and not have him defeat Ben anymore. This actually impresses Elise, who's become their friend, and Wardo starts to avoid having a spar with them. Wardo's father bullies him for not being strong enough to beat Ben and insults him in front of everyone, discouraging him so much that he sits alone, absorbed in his self-consciousness and insecurities. Being a nice friend, Elise decides to lift his mood and take him around the town to relax him. This works for Wardo a bit too much than expected, and he starts assuming that Elise being happy around him means she's interested in him. This causes him to develop feelings for her, even though he knows his best friend does too. A few days later, he overhears his fellows gossiping in the training grounds about Elise rejecting Ben's confession. This makes him be more confident about Elise liking him, so he runs to confess to her. He reaches her place, ready to risk everything, even his family name, for her, only to notice her kissing none other than Ben inside the house. The day Ben confessed to Elise, he was very confused on why she rejected him and follows her, begging her to at least try and consider the idea of them being together. But he stopped midway by the sight of Elise releasing her mana. She tells him how her body is filled with so much mana that it can break her if not released, and if she's caught doing that someday, her life would obviously be in danger. She smiles at him, telling him she never wants someone who she likes to get caught as her accomplice and be in danger, but Ben answers her by hugging her. She gets scared of the mana affecting her, but he's unfazed and tells her that he'll help her in this problem and love her with all of himself. As Ben and Elise have happy times in their new relationship with their pet dog, Bernoman, Wardo kept getting drunk and out of his mind while always observing them from afar. He even noticed her releasing her mana. The drunk Wardo even whined to his father about it. On the other hand, Elise's increased mana starts affecting her body and making her weaker. This worries Ben so much that he requests to her to wait for him and take care while he isolates himself in his lab to create a potion that can enhance her physical abilities so they can live stronger and longer. But while he was working like crazy, a drunk Wardo comes clean about his feelings to Elise, who can't help but apologize to her friend for having him accidentally misunderstand the situation. She even adds how she knows Wardo is aware of her magic and have been silent about it since it makes her a criminal. She knows Wardo would never go against his father, and even though Wardo tries to say he can't even get those words out of himself, so he leaves in embarrassment. Meanwhile, as the village faces a dry spell, the stupid villagers start protesting against Wardo's father to bring down the rain. But of course, he's not God to control the weather, so as he briefs Wardo about the situation and dealing with people, he tells them that these people don't hate him and are just angry and need someone to release their anger, and there could be no better option than a witch to blame at the moment. Werdo is freaked out and protests against his father about not harming Elise, but his father calls him weak for getting controlled by emotions and locks him up. Adamant on saving her, Werdo escapes High Father and reaches the place of Elise's execution. As Elise shouts her name as a call for help, people glare at him, ready to attack and execute him for supporting a witch. Panicked at the situation, Werdo does what he's best at. He runs away. Elise is executed before Ben could reach to save her. Back to present, Ben tries to rush to Elise, but Hansol grabs an emotionally scattered Ben. Hansol is confused at the sudden, simpler movements of Ben, but nevertheless focuses on finishing the business. He holds Ben to the ground, who weakly punches Hansol's arm, begging and crying for him to let go. Hansol keeps hitting Ben until he beats him to pulp and then stands up to go take care of the zombies. As he's about to leave, Bertelmann hits another Bonanado, annoying Hansol till he realizes that this time the dog's using his skill to collect his family, Frank, Elise, and Ben, and rush off. Line and Hansol are unbothered by it, but Werdo freaks out, not wanting Ben to leave alive since he knows Ben will be back again for revenge. As Werdo begs everyone to chase and kill Ben, Line enters the castle premises and rushes towards the gate, threatening Werdo to kill him for mistreating her aunt. Werdo realizes she's after him and runs, once again leaving a disappointed being. Leaper and Hendard stop her in front of the gate and attack her, even though it's obvious they are weaker. She just uses their swords to land on it and jump towards the castle wall where Werdo previously stood. As the two looks at her shocked, she tries to stop her, only to be defeated by an easy tap from the back of Line's sword on her head. Blob tries to stop her, but she easily dodges him, but praises her training brother for getting stronger than before, even if his movements are still slow for fighting. Blog is left questioning his improvements, while Lime finally reaches Werdo, wanting to kill him for bringing her family down. He tries to apologize, but she isn't ready to take anything from him other than his life. As her sword is about to hit Werdo, she's stopped midair by someone. Hansol holds her midair while she is left still and unable to move. He then starts hitting her to ground in the manner of a cable pulled over exercise. He suddenly realizes that he's not dealing with a stone-like guy anymore and worries if he killed her, but Werdo assures him that she's not that weak and is alive, just blacked out. A while later, Line gains consciousness with her mind all scattered in the guest room of Werdo's castle. The kid tells her it was Hansol's request to take care of her. She asks the kid where she could find Werdo, who, unaware of her reasons, sweetly tells her that he's getting physical training session by Hansol at the moment. The kid guides Line to where the personal training is going on, but Line doubts the kid's directions since the path is too rough and isolated for a count to be in. But the kid points at where he could see them, and when they finally reach, Line witnesses a disoriented and pained Werdo on all fours with a cart tied to him as he pulls the cart with all his might, and a happy Hansol sits on it enjoying the training session. While the voodoo builders train like that with ease, Werdo seems to have his soul sucked out, and as soon as he witnesses Line, he starts begging her to kill him. But on seeing his state, Line seems to have her soul refreshed and with utter calmness states she doesn't want to kill Werdo anymore. Meanwhile, Hansol's psychopathic training ability is created on seeing Werdo beg to be killed, and he thinks Werdo is enjoying and loving it, hence doing so. Later in the meeting after the war, some of the officials are summoned to conclude the war that went down along with Line, Hansol, and some Gouda builders. The bench discusses how Rayon flatly refused to come back, talking about having some important business, so they decide to announce Leaper and Hendard to make generals. Then gratitude is shown to Hansol and the Gouda builders, but Hansol gets up violently, scaring Werdo, and proceeds to break Werdo's chair. This shocks everyone, but it's actually their training method to be on a seating position without a chair, and all of the ghouls are also sitting the same way. Werdo sits like that shakily, wanting to be killed. The meeting then proceeds to talk about the verdict for Line. Since Werdo forgave her, they discuss a small punishment for her, but Werdo interrupts casually by telling her he's her culprit, so she's free to kill him. Obviously, because he can't seem to handle that position without a chair, but Line is satisfied with Werdo's state and refuses. Frantic with the pain, he begs someone to judge him for his incompetency, and that excites an innocent Hansol, who thinks it's because Werdo wants to invest more time in training. The others use this opportunity to want to take over Werdo's seat, but then Hansol mentions the new feudal lord would also train for better, making everyone back out right away, calling Werdo the most suited feudal lord. Werdo decides to grant Hansol the modern training equipment he wants, but it turns out that they don't have good enough technology for that, and only Behemoths, the spirit of their land, is capable enough to build all that, but he's unaware of the whereabouts of Behemoths. Line interrupts, revealing she can guide them there since she can talk to spirits only on the condition of them helping her to take revenge against the Black Wizards who annihilated her family. Those Black Wizards call themselves the Illuminati, and turns out Ben has been working with them too. Two of those people meet Ben, sharing how their lord is disappointed in him, but Ben seems to be wanting a second chance. They spite him by telling him he's better off without Elise and they should eradicate her. This works just as they expected, and Ben right away turns to his monster form to attack them. In close proximity, Ryan also reaches to find the Illuminati. Ben keeps trying to attack them due to their harsh statement about Elise, and they both call it his betrayal and run off. While running off, the dancing doll-like girl and the scarecrow-like monster discuss how their leader already knew Ben is going to betray them and talk about who gets to keep his diary of experiments. Their run is interrupted by someone else claiming for the diary, and with one attack, Ryan appears in front of them with the girl dead and the monster injured. The monster turns into its true form and tries to attack Ryan, but Ryan easily dodges him and mocks him for smelling like a place full of weed, and with ease, she kills off the monster. Wardo keeps cutting grass to make way for Hansol, even though Line tries to stop him from doing so, but then Hansol tells him to follow behind, doing walking lunges. Line makes them all travel in almost like a circular path and tells them that the spirit path is different than normal ones. She then stops at a place and tells them it's the right place. She gets lost in the soothe and calm of the place and absorbs it as she notices the spirit path, while on the other hand, a distracted Hansol sees the ground to be soft enough and keeps commanding everyone to do more and more jumping squats. But in the middle of their exercise, they are pulled into oblivion by Line. As they fall off into a space, Line introduces them to the spirit realm and the motherland Gaia. They all try to guide their body in wind when suddenly gravity increases on them and they all fall badly on ground, except Line, who manages to smoothen her landing, and Hansol, who thinks the gravity is perfect for squats. Hansol is also impressed about them having a home gym and wants to meet the leader of the spirits, Behemoth. But some night-like armored huge monsters surround them suddenly. All those monsters start pushing on Hansol and put all their force to dig Hansol into the ground, but it turns out Hansol is enjoying the progressive increase in load. Everybody then suddenly starts feeling the ground shake, but it turns out to be Hansol's muscles vibrating and increasing in size as he increases to a much greater size than those monsters and treats them as dumbbells by asking former ghoul lord to increase the weight. As he enjoys the workout, a Gouda builder, upon being inquired, tells Line that it's his leg day. She asks what a leg day is, but the confused Gouda builders, who was the worst at explaining, repeats it as the most obvious thing that it's a leg day. Blob interferes, explaining to her what it means when they all hear the voice of Behemoth introducing itself and asking who he calls ants on why they came there. But instead of responding, everyone seems to be more invested in what Hansol's been doing, who throws away the monsters and travels to the sea to drink its water, since water helps grow muscles. He mentions that the said seawater is not very salty and has a mild and sweet taste. This excites everyone and they copy Hansol into jumping and drinking the seawater to grow muscles, while Behemoth gets offended at being ignored by them all. Hansol, after getting well hydrated, turns to Behemoth, ready to talk, but his ego has already been bruised, so Behemoth decides to teach them a lesson for their bad manners and talk to them only if they survive the punishment. He creates a changing maze with golems in different paths and challenges them to cross that maze and reach him, since it's impossible to do so without the help of spirits. Line is amused by this and uses her breaststroke exercise to jump higher in the air to find a way, but Behemoth increases the gravity to make it impossible for her to jump high. The Gouda builders all start pushing on the walls, but Behemoth laughs at them, telling them that those walls made by spirits won't break just because they are applying force using their bare hands, but before he could mock them further, Hansol easily breaks the wall. Blog tells everyone about the brittleness of the walls and tells them to use what Hansol broke as their center and start breaking. Everyone easily starts breaking the walls, leaving Behemoth speechless. Everyone wonders how to deal with the golems when Line jumps and attacks their eyes and tells everyone to target them, since their energy won't circulate when their eyes are damaged. This way, they all easily defeat all the golems and carry on with their path, infuriating Behemoth to no end. They then reach the final way to reach Behemoth, but that path is blocked with a huge weight, and it needs to be lifted if they want to meet Behemoth. The Gouda builders try to lift it weirdly when one of them noticed the rope connected to it, and the rope goes through a pulley to a device. The sight makes Hansol's eyes water, since it's been 11 months, and this is the first time Hansol got reminded of his home by seeing a lat pull down in front of him. A lat pull down machine is a machine used to help exercise for the back muscles by having the posture in a more safe and efficient manner. He wipes his tears in order to not want to lose muscles. Everyone inquiries about the machine, while Coward Wardo questions while shivering if it's a threat, making Line warn him threateningly to shut up. Hansol then briefs everyone about what a lat pull down is and that it helps work on back muscles in a more efficient manner as compared to the back exercises they've all been working on, and its device where they won't be needing each other's assistance to work out. It's a pull-up device where one can adjust weights, however, in the given situation there's only one weight that they need to lift. He then decides to demonstrate it to them rather than just explain, which excited everyone enough to chant for him. He starts demonstrating what he's doing step by step, along with the muscles this exercise targets, as well as the potential damages to their muscles if they make mistakes. He proceeds to guide them in detail as they fascinate at the sight of Hansol exercising. He then performs the exercise and actually manages to pull the weight up right away with no difficulty. Everyone starts jumping inside the path while Hansol carries on his exercise and performs 4 sets. Werdo mentions how Hansol will get in if he leaves the rope that alerts the Gouda builders, and the team then holds the weight along with the help of former Lord's special skill to have Hansol get down with them. Hansol reaches them and praises their increase in strength as they lift the heavy load. They reach down the path where they see a factory-like setup and a hamster everywhere busy working on whatever their jobs are. Line is extremely fascinated by the sight and tries to touch one of the hamsters, but Hansol stops her, giving her a weird example of not touching the gym equipment unless officially applied for it. In short, he tells her not to touch the hamsters without permission. Someone from far agrees with his words, and they all turn to find a small dog glaring at them with a runny nose and a fat stomach. He introduces himself as Behemoth, almost disappointing everyone with the personality. Former Lord compares his fatness with Behemoth, which offends him about being compared to a lowly being. But his blabbering is stopped by a hit on the head, and the teary-eyed dog stands there while a cat introduces itself as real Behemoth, who's been enjoying the show from behind. The dog is introduced as Lena, the highest-class spirit, as it sits sulking about the hit. Behemoth introduces the hamsters as high-class spirits as well. Everyone is amused by the animal-like spirits and nevertheless comes straight to business. As Hansol requests her for the modernized training machines, Werdo stops him and officially introduces himself along and officially outs a request for the machinery in return of whatever the spirits request of them. Behemoth thinks about it and offers to do that in return of them, defeating the eel-like monster that has been polluting their land with evil recently. Everyone agrees to do so. Behemoth then offers to send Lena to guide them, who reluctantly has to agree since it's been lazing around lately and Behemoth has gotten aware of that. Ryan seems to have poked a beehive by going into that forest, but the bunch of monsters under their leader named Oculus, trying to catch Ryan, don't know that she's not afraid of bees and enjoys honey, so she doesn't lack at all when facing the bunch of monsters against her. She then uses her Forest of Swords technique, leaving all her opponents amazed at her strength as they were never told she was this strong. Her Forest of Swords finishes them all in a single strike, and she decides to proceed since there's no use coming that far to stop. Lena eats minerals from ground, telling everyone how she gets memory of that place by eating their minerals. She then acts all surprised at one, intriguing others about her getting a memory, but it turns out she just liked the taste of the minerals. Lena dejectedly tells them not to give her a disappointed look and asks them to bring her the rocks that look really old. The Gouda builders proceed to find older-looking rocks, and two of them try to find a good space on rock to grip it. Hansol interrupts them and grips the rock from the space in front of him and punches his finger inside, creating a handle on it. He then starts one-arm dumbbell presses with it. Everyone starts using those rocks in their own suited exercises, while Lena observes the distracted monsters who had forgotten what they went to search rocks for. Lena proceeds to try rocks on her own when she gets a memory. The Oculus has a meeting inside a cave with someone named Cork. He sips from his cup and talks about some core they've been making when suddenly the burning taste makes him spit it and think it's poison. But Cork replies it's nothing but a blessing called whiskey. Cork turns out to be a toad who thinks alcohol is the best gift from God. The person attacks him, calling the toad a reptile, and talking about how they're ready to give him the ownership of the place in generosity, but Mr. Amphibian is not impressed by being called a reptile and refers how he would join the Oculus, but he doesn't like their conditions. By then, the alcohol works on the Oculus person and he gets dizzy. The toads then force more alcohol into him, making him lose consciousness. The redhead army of toads then talk to the drunk person, calling it the right way to make deals. This memory briefs Lena about the situation and what they're aiming for, but her exclamation is gone unheard by all the workout freaks as she calls them worthless. Two of the Gouda builders get into talking when one mentions the increase in growth of back muscles of the other, who then reciprocates with telling how the other increased on body weight. The former Gouda builder tells how increasing body weight is the better way to increase muscle growth, but the latter Gouda builder counters it with stimulation being the best way to increase muscle growth. Both seem to have a good enough muscle growth, but both of them still fight back and forth about what they think is best method. They then decide to settle it via competition, while the other Gouda builders settle to watch the show in amusement. Their competition starts as they both are told to do same poses to evaluate who's looked better, but by the third pose, Hansol approaches them, questioning what's been happening there. They both jump, telling Hansol what's happening and wanting his approval in each of their respective opinions. But this angers Hansol instead, and he shouts at them to work out more and then rest instead of getting into useless arguments like those. They both still try to convince him to share which one is better, so Hansol proceeds to give them a lesson in anger. He keeps shouting at them, naming exercise and asking which they think is more important, or naming different muscles like quadriceps and biceps and asking which they think is more important. He makes them realize that each stuff has their own worthwhile. Werdo stands there weirded out on how usually people give example of parents in such cases, but Hansol is giving examples of workouts. Hansol then immediately calms down, telling them they can both work on both the abilities, making them tear up, and God knows what was so emotional there. They all then start their exercises from square one in a newfound enthusiasm to be even better. Lena observes all this, thinking how they've forgotten they're on a mission. Somewhere near, Blog wanders, thinking how he couldn't catch Line back in the war and how he needs to work on himself even more. He thinks how Hansol told him to strengthen his synergistic muscles, the one that help make movements efficient, if he wants to be stronger, so he looks around for a slime to create a resistance band for himself. But before he could catch the slime, someone else does it. Blog is surprised to see a toad on a tree that caught the slime, while the toad is equally surprised to see a normal human need a slime. He tells Blog he needs it to make alcohol, while Blog tells him he needs it to make himself stronger. The toad mentions how if he wants to be stronger, their boss will be a great help. An innocent Blog gets super excited at that as the toad offers to take him there, but Blog thinks how he already has a master. A while later, Blog is seen to be carelessly chugging more and more alcohol, while the toads are amused to see someone drinking this well for their first time. A drunk Blog asks when can he get stronger, when the boss, Cork, tells him he's already getting stronger, only he's talking about getting stronger at drinking. Blog then loses his consciousness with too much drinking, and when he wakes up, he has an extremely dry throat, but the hangover is not the real issue. It's the fact that he's tied by something sticky to a huge wall with a bunch of random beings. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.